We're gonna keep this spoiler-free up to a certain point. I'll let you know when we go into spoiler territories, but don't worry, otherwise at the start, you're okay if you haven't seen it yet. But yes, the Amazing Digital Circus is finally here in cinemas, an indie animation in the big screen. You'll love to see it. We haven't touched on the Amazing Digital Circus since, like, the pilot. I have just been missing out on an episode-to-episode review format. But I have very much kept up with it in my personal life. This is a show I have seen every day one that it's had, although part of the reason I didn't make videos on them is I kind of have an unpopular take. I just didn't have enough to say about episode 2 or 3 to warrant a review. My listing of which episodes are the best and the worst is not, I think, the general consensus, but I do 100% like the vibe that this show is going for. It's very different, right? It's very slapstick, it's very internet, and all of that kind of stuff I absolutely adore. And this video is mostly going to focus on the ending specifically. We have actually got another video coming up that'll talk more about the whole series. But for coming into this, I'm not attached to the fandom. I know a handful of the theories leading into it. I knew nothing of what to expect. I was even surprised that it was a double bill at first, so hey, show me episode 8 again, why not? I think there are some episodes that have really worked in the past and some that kind of haven't, usually coming down to if there's actually plot progression. That's always been my kind of main focus. The pilot introduced so many loose threads that I was hooked to hear about, and of course now that we're in the finale, of course we're probably gonna get some loose ends sorted and actually talk about the bigger meaning here. So, as a blanket statement of whether this ending hits the landing, I would say yeah. It is a decent ending. The cinema screening I went to was of course packed with the Amazing Digital Circus crowd. Naturally, they were a little bit louder than your usual cinema experience. It was a little bit Spider-Man-y in places. You know what I mean by that, right? And my observation is they were absolutely enthralled throughout, and the episode does do a good job to really lean on some of the more emotional beats of the overall plotline, all the while giving us some great artistic cinematography. I think the show has always done good visuals, but this one in particular really goes off on one. There's all sorts of long droning one-ers and interesting camera motions that I don't think I've really seen in cinema before, let alone indie. I was pretty satisfied with the ending it actually ran with and delivered, although some of the execution is a little bumpy. I have questions afterwards, which is not the best sign. It's a nitpick. It's not as bad as the teenager next to me who completely misunderstood the ending, but we'll get to that in a bit. I think that's a him issue. I don't think that's a show issue. With the expectations that I had of what I wanted them to cover going into wrapping this all up, I think this show pretty much covered all of it. There is like a little 10% slither I wish we either got more direct confirmation of or touched at all. But there are so many moving beats in this world, there are a lot of characters and all sorts going on, and this finale was already pretty long by itself. Double billing, it was like 90 minutes, and certainly put its time into the things that I think the fans were certainly hoping that it would sink its teeth into. Maybe I'm just a little bit of an outsider who wants different things out of the show slightly. We'll get there. There is a lot of really neat tying back to both the beginning of the double bills, messaging, plot lines, lines, and locations, and similarly, it comes right back to the first episode too. You know, the classic this is the ending, and it works very decently. I think there are some great interpretations you can reach out of it that is always nice to see in your media, if you have the literacy for it. It went in directions I still genuinely didn't expect it to take, which is nice that it kept me on my toes. And having it be in an actual theatrical room meant there was a lot of bass and reverberations, which was really good with some particular scenes, just hamming up that sort of intensive ambience. And by the time the credits came round, there were a few tears in the room, and I don't think that's just because of the fan base. I think it was genuinely very heartfelt and strong. By no means would I call it as terrible as I'm sure some sides of the internet really wants to dog on it for some reason. There are issues, but I think they're minor ones, mostly. It's not a perfect ending, it's not a perfect delivery, but decent? Yeah. For a show as large and iconic as this, I think it does a well enough job of landing on its feet and hitting a real crowd pleaser that has everyone remember this show still fondly afterwards. And if that's not the goal at the end of the day, then what is? That being said, let's now get into the spoiler territory, as I've got a lot of specifics I want to bring up. There's going to be a few more criticisms. You're going to see why I'm calling this more of an 8 or a 9 out of 10, and what bits I'm sort of docking as the 10% slider of, alright. Interesting. Hey there! Thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. The spoiler point of this video, we'll see where we plant it. Come subscribe if you're interested in more animated movie reviews. We'll also be doing another Amazing Digital Circus video, where we're going to be covering the very best and very worst episode, reacting and talking about why. And also all things indie we'll also cover. Shout out to the 2 people in the cinemas that actually recognized me. I've never been recognized at the cinema before. Ellie and Lily. This is what happens when I go slightly out of town. But thanks for joining along, and now to the spoiler territory of the Amazing Digital Circus. So, let's talk specifics, shall we? You know the plot that led us up to this point, right? Caine is dead. The characters are now in a grayscale version of the circus with absolutely no limitations, but also no guidance, right? And while I kind of have my criticisms of some episodes just not doing plot enough, this kind of feels like a 26 episode series that we only got to see 9 of, and they kept giving us the filler episodes instead of the meaty episodes. But that is kind of the point. The messaging we knew what was for this show before even this final episode came out was that it's all about trying to find, I think, purpose or solace and satisfaction, find something within a stagnant life, right? It's the idea that they are never going to leave the circus. This is covered in episode 7 when they try and then it fails. They repeat it at the beginning of episode 8 saying, let's give up on leaving. And similarly, even here with these limitations gone, it's more so about every character's reaction to this reality rather than anything more. I kind of was always of the opinion that the exit is literally in the void. There was like this gravitational pull out of the realm that I assumed does send you out if it can. And the only reason you can't leave that way is Caine appears with his alert and then yanks you. So with Caine now gone, they'd end up in the void and shoot out if they have to leave, right? None of that is really attempted in this episode. The idea of leaving a tool has long since abandoned, and that point is especially driven through with the first real revelation of the episode, which is that on top of the fact that Caine is the cause of the mistake of deleting the AI, Jack's trying to make it an antagonistic point, he then goes on to also admit that he, I think, also dealt with the mind files the first time that I think brought everybody here. I say I think, because they don't really follow up on that. I think that was meant to be the big thing he regrets that he mentioned in the aquarium in like the gun episode. But he had long gotten past that guilt, and the people in the room right now aren't the mind files he dragged in. It was back in the 90s when all the other programmers came in. That I feel like was an interesting beat of a character they don't really explore much more. It is in the distant past, it's already over. Okay, fine, maybe I remembered it wrong anyway. Maybe that's not what he was saying. Sure. What follows next is everyone learning, though, that they are mind files, and that there is literally no escape because they are digital clones. Alright, that sorts the exit issue going on. The plot is not to leave. You always think it is in episode 1. Wow, what a crazy world they're in. How do they escape and live in this world? It's only the living in this world that they'll do. After that, they're all despairing, isolating themselves, as Pomni and King are patching up holes with the basic shapes that an AI first learns to use. I like that. And then Pomni as well going out of her way to make sure everyone is comfortable by reaching out to them in some form. You see where it's going here. It's all about the characters, and Pomni being the glue that really brings everyone together. King heals Pomni, Pomni heals Ragatha. They all heal each other by healing the circus itself. There's something really nice to be said there of, in such a terrible world, we get together with local community. Extrapolate that however you wish to. There is a really long shot with Pomni and Ragatha that had everyone in the crowd going, is that implying something more? Whether it is that, or whether it is just the fact that they say, oh, you're my first real friend here and I care about you, I do think felt a little unearned. There are a few things in this episode that are proper callbacks or finishings of an arc, right? A lot of times, though, they don't get the 3-piece establishment. We saw a bit of drama between Pomni and Ragatha being close or not close early on in like episode 4 or something. Then we haven't seen a lot of them together, I don't really think. Only for now at the end to say, oh, actually, you are my everything. I don't think it was fully earned. It felt like one beat and then a second. But sure, you need to get some sense of community, so they go with those two. All the while, you have Jax being the most isolated, not really getting involved in the healing of the circus as much as he does want to be involved. It does kill him on the inside. Only for them to go to the very next story beat, which is, you've had your warning, Jax does in fact abstract. It's interesting, they don't make a big deal of that revelation. This is actually one of my biggest critiques of the whole series. I was getting sick of Jax almost abstracting, and then he doesn't. I just said that the ×3 rule was not being established. They went in the wrong direction with Jax. How many times does he go in front of a mirror having a revelation and then almost do it, and then he doesn't? Oh, like, when is the plot gonna move forwards? With this one, it happens in the background, and he's already there. But to be fair, I like what you can extract from that, not abstract, extract, because oftentimes with this kind of material, it is that people just vanish in the background after not being noticed. It's all about community. You've got to reach out to your fellow person and make sure they're all right. Isolation seems to be at its core what causes abstraction. It's human nature. So the final episode is then a parallel of the first episode of dealing with this abstracted figure, but now without the AI to click and fix it all in a single shot, as well as diving into how the characters react, which isn't quite as pleasantly to another death. Interesting. I did hear that some of the members in the audience, you know, the super fans, were genuinely upset that Jax did abstract, but it's just because it's, you know, your favorite character. Great conflict and storytelling. This is where we then get to another beat that wasn't established in Threes, which is that Pomni confronts abstracted Jax and knows to shoot out all of the lights to make him docile. We saw it once in a flashback with Queenie. It's faintly relevant to Kinger. I don't fully buy that we should have already known that's how you deal with abstractions. Following on to then hugging said beast that puts you into a mind palace of the abstracted, I do really like as a mechanic though. I love mind palaces and the spiritual realm, and it was a really interesting demonstration. There are several doors, and they're each, I guess, different archetypes of how Jax sees other characters and then plays a role with that. And they do all sorts of great artistic stuff. There's a big Looney Tunes world, a genuinely horrifying one with Jax's giant googly eyes. The flirting scene our crowd definitely enjoyed. And there is a locked up door that they do not approach, and we don't ever see behind it. Surely there is some form of Jax that we're really never going to see? That's kind of a shame. We see the real Jax in the sense of the Jax we know in the final door, but we don't see the super hidden up core one, which is a shame. There was speculation that it's the version of reality where Ribbit died and the way he sees her and the role he plays for that, but that's also reality. Also kind of confusing that the Mind Palace is just a bunch of multiple timelines of what if someone else abstracted. A cool idea, a little confusing, but alright, sure. After Pomni then goes through the psyches of Jax, interacting with them and all the rest of it, she then gets to approach the real Jax, where we then get an elongated sequence of his point of view and the full timeline of the circus. We see his IRL backstory, where we learn that he ran away from home and was homeless for a time. Here's another question. How did he end up with a headset on his head? I heard speculation that he was like hospitalized and then it was like a medical brain scan that got him into the circus. But then no one else seems to be injured. Ragatha and Pomni appeared by going to what I think is the same building and putting on a headset. It's a little unsure. Maybe I just need to watch it again. But the fact that several people in the room were confused, it's not the best sign. Or maybe I should give the show some leniency. The guy on the left of me really didn't understand what was going on. Anyway, this point of view shot was all of the lore dump you wanted to see, but every time it jumped forwards, there was a flash of abstracted eyes. I got tired of that by the end. It was a cool visual, style. There were like 40 transitions of that. Like, it just kept happening because it was the entire timeline, but every cut was the abstracted eyes. I've had enough. Even still, there were other elements of fan service I enjoyed. Turns out Kaufmo is in fact Aaron Hansen, though it is a shame. It would have been lovely if it was actually Jack Black, but what can you do? And what it really dives into is the actual relationship and breakdown of Jax and Ribbit and Kaufmo, whereby Ribbit has a heart-to-heart with him in her room. He exposes a little bit too much of himself, talking about how he thinks he killed his mother by pushing her over, hence why he ran away, and that's interesting. He's got issues with his mother, who was verbally and emotionally manipulative, and he'll never get to find out what actually happened to his mother, whether she's alive or not. During this, there is a fantastic camera shot of us spinning out of Jax's point of view, watching him say these lines and then zipping back into him. I loved that. This backstory, I think, is a hint repetitive, in the sense of this is a character who has a bad relationship with their mother who was verbally and emotionally abusive. Kind of sounding like the other character who has an iffy relationship with their mother who's implied to have some sort of verbal or emotional manipulation to him. Jax is a little bit more his father as well, and they touch faintly on the insecurities of masculinity that are otherwise only extrapolated from Jax as a character, that I wish they leaned on more, because that's unique and interesting. There's some really interesting conversations that could be had there, but with it being more of the focus on the mum, I wasn't as into that. It's the same kind of repetition of, you've got Zubul, this great representation of body dysmorphia. I love the torture scene of her surrounded in body parts and mirrors watching herself. It's kind of similar to Gangle, who similarly has some sort of symbolic body dysmorphia or facial emotion dysmorphia, where her torture scene is a bunch of canvases of her own face melting. That's a little less distinctive, kind of repetitive. I wished it was something more clear. There's a couple of times where we're overlapping on the same beats, when I wished we had, for what is only 6 or 7 characters, more distinctive, clear issues. Because what is Gangle's torture? I still never fully got it. Insecurity? Overly emotional? She doesn't want to cry all the time? She needs confidence? It's confidence. Maybe the symbolism just didn't work as strongly for me, I don't know. And if we'd heard more about Jax and his dad, that could have been cool too. Gone are the days that Scratch is in fact Jax's father. I still was thinking that when Jax was saying he barely sees his father. I would assume due to work all the time, working at CNA, but you know what, never mind. Hey, do we ever learn what CNA stands for? Cain and Abel was like disproved, wasn't it? Damn. Anyway, after Jax feels like he's said too much to Ribbit, he starts isolating away from her. This then leads her to abstracting and him feeling the guilt of it. To which he, in response to that, then begins isolating Kaufmo. Not that we ever hear one of his jokes, and I really wish I heard one of his jokes that weren't funny. That's like the only character trait we know of him. He's unfunny. I wanted to hear one unfunny joke. Maybe I missed it. But anyway, that next level of isolation mixed with him thinking he found an exit causes him to abstract. And then what's really cool is we see first-person perspective of episode 1. Wow, we love that kind of fan service. You see Pomni's appearance from Jax's point of view, now with a new slick of paint because the animation's a whole lot different now. And even a bonus scene that we didn't see from episode 1 of Jax freaking out in front of a mirror again. That's like the 5th time in the show, but hey, you know it's going somewhere this time. No, you don't, because that's at the very beginning of the show. Oh, okay, never mind. He's got a bowling ball. Does that mean anything? No, not really, actually. I guess that whole intermission theories of cake and bowling balls and being flattened actually doesn't mean anything specifically for the characters. No, not that I can gather. What a shame. Theory bait, that's what that was. Anyway, that is the loop up of all of Jax's backstory, finally given to us. One big chunky 10 to 15 minute piece of plot progression that we've been wanting. And in response, Pomni comes up to him and hugs him, and he actually has the emotional breakdown to cry about it. Again, a poke on masculinity that we kind of have to extract more than directly cover, but you know, it's fine. He is crying pretty out front. Maybe it is pretty clear. Except then it goes in a weird direction. Oops, he steps on a flash grenade, and it all goes to pot. That felt a little contrived. That felt a little weird, but sure, who left a flash grenade in the corner of the hallway? I don't know, but they did. And in this, it wasn't even that Pomni goes to save Jax. I don't even know if saving would have been possible there. I kind of expected as well the other ending to be, with no more limitations, the gang then go into the basement and learn how to unabstract all of the abstracted characters, and then they build a paradise with themselves, even with those who died, right? Well, in the case of Jax, at least, doesn't happen. He's now gone. Pomni, slightly corrupted, but not as painfully as it seemed to be to Ragatha in episode 1. It's a nitpick, it's fine. All the others have come to save Pomni and get involved, where they build a makeshift circus and put him in there to keep him in the dark, to keep him chill. I like that. The symbolism of a circus being built within the circus. Lovely. There are some interesting directions, and the fact that they don't save Jax is very cool. Very Black Mirror. very British. The crowd in my cinema room was sad that he abstracted, and probably sad that that's kind of the be-all end-all with him. I will be curious to see how American audiences handle that. It's not the happiest ending, but that's interesting. It's not a boring, generic American happy ending, so I'm more on board with it. Kind of. Next surprise. Caine's alive! By the way, why? What? Like, there is a bit in the coding of episode 8 where we see that the code was kind of trying to let Caine delete itself. There was some surprise actor involved that wanted this to happen. That is not addressed. That's not like a secret you can read that leans into the next episode. Caine just lives. He's in the void. Was it a reset? I don't know. He just is. But there is a change in him. He is now docile. He's becoming more empathetic. He kind of just allows it as the void gravitates him out, not to the exit, but to the real barrier of the world, whereby he then builds a staircase of shapes that sometimes fall and sometimes don't beyond the realms of this box in order to find the files of the now obsolete mind files. This is a really cool addition. What the hell were they doing here? This beat here, if you remember it, is probably the single biggest piece of unfinished material in this show. Just outright confusion. Is it more theory bait? Did I grossly misunderstand this? He found the obsolete mind files of the characters. One of the names that was there was specifically Mike Dobby, who they directly confirm is the name of Scratch. To the point that the next thing we see is Caine grabbing this name, flicking it up, and Scratch appears on stage. They have a way of extracting the abstracted mind files and reprint them back into the circus. No, they don't. That never happens. But like, Scratch does not return. So then why did we see him return? Is it meant to be a symbolic representation of, hey, this name is a character in the circus? Why show it that way? Because it really looked like they just refreshed him and reset him into the world. He does not appear again. That is not reality. There isn't an ending where all the abstracted come out. I thought it was going to be he takes all the names and later on will reveal them all. Everyone gets to build a paradise together. No. Not at all. Thinking back about it, the full collection of names he saw, I think there were 7 of them. So it would have been the 5 that are alive, and Scratch, and Jax? Yeah, he learned their name, but I guess couldn't recover it if it's gone. Was there like 2 files? The obsolete, which was only those 2? And then the 5 that were... You know what I mean? The real best ending would have been if they could unabstract the abstracted, which I thought would still be a very chipper happy ending, but a decent finale to the episode. Parallel the first one. How do you solve an abstraction problem? By healing them, not by shoving them into the basement. But that's not what they do. So why did they show something about that? I don't know. I'm really lost on that. That's the biggest... Is there a bonus episode 11 that they're gonna go and do that next? I don't think so. Not from all the rest that we've seen. I don't know, man. The other thing they then do in this same scene, Caine then gets access to the internet. He's gone beyond the offline world. He has access to the internet for a limited amount of time. He's not got a very good data plan, so he only gets like 30 seconds in there. But with this, the point is he goes to discover who the humans are out in the real world, what they've achieved as well, and by learning who they are, he can better build a world for them. I really like that. I like that this is what makes him more empathetic, and he learns his lesson that what he needed was those last pieces of context clues to really understand humans in a way he didn't beforehand. I want to ask a million questions about why he has access to the internet. I still don't fully understand how everyone got here. It sounds like Caine played with the mind files to create all these clones of the programmers. Then there was that insinuation that Ragatha did it in a real estate job and got teleported in. Pomni came to an abandoned building, so I guess it's that same real estate building but abandoned. Jax just teleported in there. I still don't know if he went to hospital or if he was just homeless in that final shot. But now, if it is an abandoned building, as it was most recently, how on earth does this thing have an internet connection for 30 seconds? I have not got a bubble. It is a plot contrivance that fills the gap of AI learning a little bit more to then become a better person. I like the plot. It has to be a contrivance, which is a shame. There is a little bit of this going to a most good ending, but a couple things don't quite piece together. What a shame. I like what it intends, though. Caine then on a 3 for 3 of making people question what's going on. 4 for 4, his existence is the first one, is then Caine starts having a little bit of that I hate them, I love them kind of split, to which he then just pulls out the blue AI tumor. Oh god, is this a Scratch revelation? Is he Scratch? Oh my god, he's Scratch. No, Scratch came in here already. Well, there is at least a parallel there. Anyway, he pulls out this thing, which I guess he could just do. The corruption was just a grabbable thing. Also, the corruption is the blue AI. You kind of would have thought the red AI that went mad and ate the other one is the source of the problem, but no, it's the blue one, who we never really meet. But also, Bubble never appears again after being killed. Doesn't even actually get killed. And then is another small blue ball. Was Bubble the blue AI? A lot of this is unclear. A lot of this is, you know, you gotta piece it together. But at what point is it theory bait, and at what point is this just a little edgy, but not in the edgy way? Anyway, he throws that out into the void. We never see it again. Fine, cool. You know what? I'm glad we kind of skip the more evil AI arc. I'm done with that. But it does ask all the more questions. 4 for 4. Caine's sequence is awfully confusing. I do love, though, the visual of his AI representation within the grid. The AI view of him as a bull gets more human as he goes beyond his boundaries. As if he's really soaking in more information, his red bull becomes a red head, which comes with a body and arms. He becomes a red guy in the universe. That's really cool. Oh, also, this is a fifth final question. It's inferred that Caine loses his powers doing this since he stops floating and starts running. And he says later that he loses a bit of his power. It's subtle. I don't know why or how. He just the further out to the edges he goes, the more he loses. Interesting. All right. But I love him breaking the boundaries, pushing through. You know, the classic Detroit Become Human sequence. Very, very nice. Visually, this whole thing is stunning the whole time. It's only narratively that I've got all the nitpicks that I usually do. I like focusing on plot most of all. It's plot and small details that I'm in for. So in a lot of ways, this show doesn't perfectly align with what I'm looking for. That's okay. It was also a lot more serious this time, but I kind of like that. Anyway, after Caine has a nice little chat with the moon, he does go and return to the group solemnly. Does a whole hello Zuko here kind of thing, where he does slowly make amends, and I like that it's realistic that they don't trust him immediately, and they outright say, we're gonna take a while to trust you. To which he then goes on to do the fan servicey thing of finally showing us who they are IRL. Full on with semi-face reveals of them in the real world, and learning their names. What do you know? It's Grant that we knew, Abigail that I think was possible to find, and like Riley? Nice. Again, looping us back to that first problem in episode 1, that they didn't know their names. Wasn't it inferred that Caine was the reason they didn't know their names? Why now is it he physically found them? They specifically said, you're lying to us about what you can do, like our name. But sure, fine. It's here we then learn an element I didn't think about, which is nice, of how these people were in the real world now that time has passed. It's kind of unclear exactly how much time has passed, but there was a strong blurring line of stars that was again visually stunning to see. And we learned that they pretty much all have their own happy endings IRL. You could even, though it's not said, learn that Jax's mother is fine, because he's still out in the world, you know, not being arrested. Each of them have had their own real character development arcs, well, you know, off-screen. But also they've grown in here, sure. And to kick it all off, Caine says he's gonna make them all the leader of the circus. The kind of ending people were guessing at the very beginning with the pilot. I remember back in the day there was fan art of Pomni being Caine and having the ringmaster thing. None of them learned to fly or actually do any more magic. What he means by you will have full control is you have control to give me suggestions, I'll actually listen, and I'll be the architect that builds it, which is a little underwhelming to me. I kind of wish they were all actually magical. They were. They made a bunch of triangles, circles, and squares, and that's all we saw. But sure, they've done enough of the crazy animation up to this point. And this time now, Caine is constantly listening to them all, getting properly involved, interacting with each of their interactions and suggestions, being another one of the gang, right the way down to looping us back to that final dinner table where Caine is eating as well with them. There is no abstracted saviors, Jax does not get saved, and none of the others learn to unabstract either, even though in some form we see Scratch reset and appearing for some reason. His arc about having a tumor and trying to build something that we don't know what it is never finished or addressed, just a bad ending in some places. Like, the people had a bad ending, not the ending is badly written. But hey, maybe that's reality sometimes. As we do the final pullout, like episode 1, cinematographically exactly what I want, and it doesn't go to the exterior now because it doesn't matter. It's about finding that satisfaction in a stagnant life, stuck in their cage, but making it their own paradise. I still think it's gonna mentally break them in 1,000,000 years, and then maybe another 1,000,000. But I do think it is a decent enough ending, not the most perfect happy ending, and not the most perfectly executed one, but more than satisfactory for the crazy fan base that it has in covering so many beats and being real cinematic animation artwork, even if it's not done on an industry scale. Because it is still ultimately a powerhouse of a story of an indie team getting to the full theatrical experience. And I'm so glad, even if offline, to have been watching all the way along as it happened. There are still some unanswered questions. Maybe it's just opening the door for more theory baits. We don't see behind the locked door. Scratch doesn't come back. Some of them are still abstracted. The intermission meant nothing. How exactly did Caine live? I don't know. Why did he help delete himself? I don't know. How would they handle it years after years after years? We'll never know. What's going on with what Scratch was actually trying to build? I guess it was this in some form. The blue AI was evil now? Okay, I learnt that at the end. Was it them combined that made them corrupted and evil? I don't know. We never met the blue guy unless it's Bubble. Was it Bubble? It wasn't very clear. Was Kinga the one that forced them here? Fair enough. There wasn't really a strong reaction to that. How exactly did everybody enter? Was it medical scans? Was it an abandoned building? I don't know. How did it get the internet? I don't know. There was a lot of focus on Jax, which is probably what the fan base most wanted. Even if he does abstract, you got plenty of him speaking after the fact. Not so heavy on all of the plot explanations, but I think it was good. Though we did never see Gummy Goo again. They full on retconned his impact in a sense, where Pomni literally says to Ragatha, "You were the first real friend I met." As if to infer that the friendship with Gummy Goo didn't really matter enough, it wasn't real. Even though they also just had the revelation that none of them are real either. After specifically having a point in an earlier episode about even if they're not real, what they're feeling, what they're going through is real. They are real for being in here, even if it's insignificant, but not Gummy Goo, who we never see again. We learn that all the worlds are now open to them. They don't return to the Australian sweetie land. I guess Gummy Goo is dead, like Jax. But it is, a bit. And I don't know if we confirm what CNA actually stands for. If it is Caine and Abel, cool. But it doesn't really go into fully what happened. And I think that kind of, decent. I really enjoyed it. Perfectly encapsulates my take on the Amazing Digital Circus. I admittedly did not care for episode 2 when it came out. I did not care for episode 3 when it came out. And I did not care for episode 4 either. This show has always been character first and a lot of filler. The act of the adventures themselves are filler episodes. And as someone who came in with the, oh my god, they're in the digital circus. What do they do? How do you deal with this world? I didn't get a lot of that for a long time. It was kind of the beginning and then towards the end. But I did at the same time thoroughly enjoy a lot of the jokes and the vibes throughout. I kept watching it, and even watching back those old episodes, I really am hooked on episode 2 now, specifically because I love the Gummy Goo bit, I love a lot of the jokes, and I love when it gives you sprinkles of plot. But the only real plot in episode 2, for example, is the out-of-bounds conversation with Gummy Goo and Kinga wearing a bucket on his head. The rest of it was antics, and I wasn't always there for antics enough to be able to give a review that fully goes into this kind of depth about it. But was it decent, enjoyable, fan servicey, and overall a proper cinematic piece of art? Absolutely. I had an incredibly excitable audience, and they did clap after the finale was done as well. Although the loudest noise, of course, was during a certain moment in the credits, if you know, you know, and the post-credits being a random IRL bus stop where all the members of the circus unknowingly are in the same place on the same coach, is just a great messaging for life, that there are these people you could have a strong connection with, even if unknowingly. You may just be passing by every day. And that's just life sometimes. No, they didn't escape, you silly teenage boy next to me. I wish you had the media literacy to understand everything else that happened up to the 90 minutes of this final scene, to understand that seeing them in the real world didn't mean that they escaped into the real world. Why are you like this? It really is all about finding purpose within a stagnant life, which these characters manage to do through local community and human connection. Isolation is the worst case scenario, person to person, and letting an AI go off and do its own thing without any of that human touch element is only going to cause more disaster. And though they may be insignificant inside this little box, what they experienced was real enough, and they are no longer Abigail out in the real world. They are just Pomni. I do wish she didn't say the word just, though. I feel like she should have just said, I'm not Abigail, that's Abigail, I'm Pomni. You know, a bit more confidence. Because you can extract that all of us now are in our own little box, insignificant against an extortionately massive universe. We are real, our experiences are important, but we're also just a blip in time and space. It's all about finding your own purpose and satisfaction, even if it doesn't mean much for the bigger picture. Also, be wary of hospitals. They might clone you and put you into a cage. Yeah, I guess it is a hospital med scan, because I guess Jack's homeless might have had some injury, but specifically Gangle had an injury. We know she got hit by a van, and then woke up here. It's a little inconsistent. You know, whatever. That, at the very least, after almost speaking for an hour raw, is all of my thoughts on the finale of Glitch Productions and Gooseworks' The Amazing Digital Circus. Personally, I really do adore this show. I'll always rewatch someone watching this on YouTube. I love watching reactions. It's a big part of my main go-to. But it does have some rough edges and some unanswered questions, and maybe not enough establishing consistently to get us where we are, with so much time put towards antics and character development that also took a long time, or an inconsistent time, to get to their final beat. But overall, decent, great, would recommend, and hopefully people remember it lovingly. If they think it's the worst thing in the world, I don't believe them. For now though, I'd best finally end it off there. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this episode. Do tell us your thoughts on the Amazing Digital Circus finale. Better to say it here than immediately out to the world of Twitter to bother someone who hasn't seen it yet. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts and more, but otherwise, I shall see you all in a little bit. Cheerio!